unlike a traditional renter, where you have to go and fix certain things, in most cases you don't have to with this rent to own option. So I really think as a seller, it's a win-win. You're helping somebody that may need a little time to build their credit.
Welcome to another episode of the Michael Maloney Show, where we take you on a journey around the world, exploring the stories of successful individuals and learning from their achievements and struggles. Join us as we delve into the why and how behind their accomplishments and discover how to live a more fulfilling life. Jesse and I, we are both part of a networking and mastermind group called M1. It's Map to a Million. It's a mastermind group based out of Arizona that is ran by a guy named Rock Thomas. It's all about Map to a Million. So he helps take normal people who are just motivated, inspired, and want to live a life of abundance, and helps them with his own framework, help people figure out how to do that. Like he calls them gardens, the different gardens of life, like your relationships, your finances, your job, your relationship with God. I don't remember all of them, but there's multiple gardens, and the whole point of it is to focus on each of them all at the same time, incrementally, so that we can grow and become our best self, so that we're capable of becoming a millionaire. But anyways, that's how Jesse and I met each other officially. Well, we haven't met each other in person, just to be clear, but we've been networked online, and so that's kind of how we came about this meeting. And Jesse, I'm excited to have you on today. So thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Michael. Nice to be here. Yeah, and I've seen some of your posts, so I think we're in a similar mindset with all the personal development and everything.
Heck yeah. Dude, that's one of the coolest things about these masterminds is you find people who are maybe not perfectly aligned, but a lot of them are pretty much damn near perfectly aligned. It's all about ambition and goals and setting ourselves up for success and putting ourselves in outside of our comfort zones and just striving for gold. And it's really powerful when you get in the same room with people that are like you in that sense.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure. But so I guess, Jesse, tell me about yourself, brother. What do you do?
So I've been involved in real estate. Renewed Residences is my company. We've been involved in short-term rentals for the past year and a half, and that's a big part of the M1 group. The other part of the business is rent-to-own homes. And so as part of our Texas lease option wholesaling, I guess, business, we help business owners or just investors sell their homes without having to go through a traditional realtor. And so what we do is we work with rent-to-own buyers. We connect them. We do kind of like an assignment fee.
So you'll find people that have money probably and aren't in a hurry to cash out. So if you own a house and it's worth $500,000, but you also have 5 other houses, or you run a business and you don't need that money right away, you might consider doing a private loan with somebody so that they don't pay as much interest. And I mean, what is that? Am I on the right ballpark
that's
there?
That's semi part of it. I mean, the main part with the lease option part is not a sale, but it is a lease. And so instead of it being a traditional, like, hey, I'm just going to sell it for 300, normally we could sell it for 320, 330, maybe a little higher, but you're doing it on a 2-year lease agreement so that while they're in the home, they're making payments, they're taking over all the maintenance, and then on or before the term end date, they're going to be buying it at that price, that set-in price, and so you don't have to pay the realtor fees. Usually you can set it up pretty favorably towards you as a seller, and then the buyer benefits too because they do lock in the price. So in some instances, they come in with a little bit more equity than they would if they just bought the house in the next 2 years, because the house increase in value sometimes overtakes what they agreed to pay you.
Are you saying the buyer pays back the house in that first 2 years, or they pay down the loan over those 2 years and then go and get a conventional mortgage?
It would be just a straight lease, but they do come in with about 5% down, so that's a big difference. So let's just hypothetical numbers. Let's just do $300,000. They come in with $25,000 down. They lease it from you for $3,500 a month. Well, out of those $3,500, the only thing that's credited to them on the back end is just say $3,500, usually 1 month's rent, and then anything that they put down. So if they put down 25, and then you're going to credit them 35, the credit at the end of the day towards that 300 sell price is going to be at 25 plus 3,500, so what's all 28,500. So they would owe you around, let's just say 372, right? So you're still getting that weekly, principal pay down throughout the term, and you get that non-refundable down payment up front. So it's not like, again, it's not like a traditional realtor, a traditional tenant where they come in and they don't put anything but a security deposit. They put a pretty big down payment. And
Sure.
then
Okay.
and then the beauty too is that they agree to take over the maintenance on the house. So unlike a traditional renter, where you have to go and fix certain things, in most cases you don't have to with this rent to own option. So I really think as a seller, it's a win-win. You're helping somebody that may need a little time to build their credit, and maybe even maybe they make the money already. A lot of our buyers, they're entrepreneurs. They make the money. They just don't have good credit. They can't get the financing.
So the part that I'm confused about is the 2 years. So what happens after the 2 years? Because how is it? Because conventionally people go out and they get a loan like a 25, 30-year mortgage. Does the seller hold the balance for that whole duration?
So what it is, we set it up as a lease. We have two contracts. We have a lease agreement which says, okay, you're renting it for 2 years at this price. It's like a normal lease. And then you have another contract. It's an option to purchase. And the option to purchase is tells you, okay, we're going to give you 2 years to buy it at this price.
Gotcha.
And
Okay.
if you don't buy within that 2 years, then that option period expires.
Which
You're not.
seller's not out anything because then it's basically just like a rental income property.
Yeah, that's correct. That's pretty much it.
And then it helps the buyer because it allows them to get their feet underneath them. And maybe if they went to a bank and said, "Hey, I entered this rent to buy contract. I want to," and maybe if they did at the beginning of the term and said, "Hey, I want to prove to you that I can make these payments for 24 months straight.
Yeah.
And then at the end of this, I'd really like you to work with me or something." Maybe they could do that if they have bad credit and then gain the trust of a bank or a credit union and then maybe be able to find money.
That's
Have you ever
true.
seen that happen?
Yeah, yeah. So we do have partners that are in the banking industry that we'll connect our buyers with as part of our program, and then we have credit repair. So some of our
Awesome.
buyers will go through that.
So during that 2 year period, you're actually helping them repair their credit so that maybe even at the end of that period, they're eligible for a loan.
Yeah, yeah. So the cool thing about it is they can buy it any time during the lease option period. Let's
Cool.
just say you need only 6 months. We still most likely will give you like a year to 2 years just to let you have that leeway, but you can buy it any time. So it doesn't mean that you're required to lease it for 2 years.
And that purchase price is probably the 24 months rent plus the value of the house, and then that's all agreed. So that, like, if you let's say you buy it 1 year in, does that seller still get that second year's rent in the total price, or do they just lose out on that rent and then pay? Does the buyer just
So
like pre-agreed on price?
so I'm a little uncertain on the question, but I think what you're asking is about the rent credit part, about the $3,500 rent credit that will go towards the sell price. Is that correct?
Yeah, so like let's say you find somebody for me to buy a house from, and I agree to pay 30, like you said, $3,500 a month. And after in month 13, I get a raise, and I'm like, man, I just want to go buy this house. So we agreed that I'd buy the house for 300,000 after 2 years, but I only paid 13 months worth of rent. There's those 11 months there that I would have technically not ever pay, but there was already a prearranged price. So do those 11 months pay or
Okay.
rent get to the total agreed upon price?
So again, when we set up the agreement, the option to purchase is it's usually like a 2 year term. You could buy it any time, and it doesn't mean that you have to lease it. So even though you sign a lease agreement that says you're going to lease it for 2 years, we don't hold you to that. You can buy it any time during your lease period. So unlike a traditional lease, like where hey, if you sign a 2 year, you have to pay the whole 2 years. No, it's not like that. We give you up
Gotcha.
to 2 years to buy, and then as soon as you're ready to buy, you buy, and you don't have to worry about those additional payments. It's just we're the whole goal of our program is to get you to the finish line to get you to buy the house.
Yeah, right. But from the seller standpoint, they really maximize their return if the person truly stays in there for 24 months and then buys it that next day, pretty much, right? Because then they're getting the rent and then they're. But
Yeah, I mean
either
that's
way,
true. Yeah, that's true, and it would be better if they would rent the whole time. But I mean, sometimes sellers just want the money and they don't
yeah,
worry.
that
The
makes
good thing
sense.
about it, there's no fees on the realtor side, so they save about 6 to 8% on in most
True.
cases. So that covers a lot of that waiting period. So I
Yeah,
think
definitely. How so where do you live again, Jesse? Somewhere in
let's.
Texas, right?
I live in Houston, Texas.
Houston, awesome. So that's a pretty big economic environment. How do people like, how do your customers find you?
A lot of our customers go to our website where I think we're on the first page of Google for rent to own in Houston.
So that's
And
common. People with bad or with not as good credit probably know about that because they've been led to that option, right? And so people probably just search rent to own housing.
yep, that's correct. Yeah, we're actually creating a new website soon. It's going to be called texasrenttown.net. I think that's going to be a little bit more tailored towards our niche, and we'll have that up soon. Um, so, like, I think as soon as we get that, we'll probably get in a lot more inquiries.
Great, man.
Um,
Good for you. What
yeah,
led you into rent to own?
well, it's a wholesaling option, right? So, I love real estate, but I didn't have the down to buy certain homes. So I was like, you know what? Let me just start with wholesaling. And it's been a good business model. Like, there's not a lot of people that know how to do rent to own. At least they don't know how
Which,
to do.
by the way, Jesse, let me cut you off real quick. Sorry. For anybody listening, can you give like a 30-second explanation of what wholesaling is?
So wholesaling is you're pretty much like a broker, and you're brokering a deal between a buyer and a seller, but you're not an agent. Like, I'm not a licensed agent right now, so I
So what's that
can.
normally look like? Like you probably go out and find people that are looking to, or you find off market deals, right? That's technically a wholesaler, right? You find deals and then so like let's say Jesse goes out and finds Mary who has a house that lives in, or let's say she finds Mary who owns 10 rental units but is just sitting on them happy as can be, and then Jesse comes in and says, hey, because he buys a list off the internet maybe with this lady's address and phone number, he might call them and say, hey, Mary, would you be interested in selling this house? And then at the same time, he keeps a bunch of investors over in his other hand who are, currently looking for properties. And then so he finds Mary, he has the property investors. He says, hey, property investors, I found this house from this lady named Mary. She wants, let's say, 300,000. Jesse, you sell it to them for 330,000. Well, you make that money on it. But if your investors or the person looking for a house doesn't have good credit, he can present them with another option, which is the buy to or rent to own. So then he can say, hey, Mary, I have this customer of mine who's looking for a house but doesn't have good credit. Would you be interested in a private loan, essentially, a rent to a loan clause? And then that's how he makes his money. He gets to take a cut of it, and then he makes the connection between the buyer and the seller, and then they ride off into the sunset, and everybody's happy. So
Yeah,
that isn't that pretty much how it works?
so pretty much wholesale deals. Let's just say you're selling a house. I come to you and say, hey, look, I want to put it under contract for 400. Um, and then what I do is I go to my end buyer for the rent to own process. I'll explain it. They come in with 5% down. What we normally do is we would split that. So normally maybe 50-50 or something. So if they're going to bring 25, you get 15, or you get 12 and I get 12. And then but we do have to have equitable interest. So that's why we have to sign an agreement. There's a certain amount of, I think it's usually like $20 I send you, just to say, hey, you know what, I have equitable interest to buy your home. But then with that contract, I assign it to my end buyer. That's pretty much what wholesaling is. You're just assigning the rights to buy that what you and the buyer agree to another person. And that person is taking over that contract, the same thing that me and you agreed to, and agree to the terms. And then I would just get a part of the down payment.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, I've you see rent to own and what is it, like lease to build, and like there's so many different programs out there You can be really creative in the way that you can finance different projects, whether it's residential or commercial. That's pretty neat. And then Jesse, before we started recording, you mentioned that you're into Airbnbs. Is that right?
Yeah, so I started Airbnb management about a year and a half ago. Mike Skoldrin is in M1, and he has part of the M1 curriculum. It talks about how he became successful in the Airbnb management business. There was a guy in my M1 pod, Tristan, and he's also part of Mike's at Mastermind. And so when Tristan started talking about his success in the Airbnb management business, I was like, you know what, I got to try this out. It got me super excited. At the time, I was working at the city government for 8 years, and I've been wanting to get out. And so I saw this as an opportunity for me to build my management portfolio, and so pretty much within a month of learning about Airbnb, I started managing like 15 properties.
Wow.
Um, and so
Local to you, you found properties and started managing them for the owners.
yeah, a big part of it was the M1 team because one of the property managers in Houston, they're a pretty big management company. I just started managing on behalf of them, but the connection was the M1 team. And so I started managing these 15 properties for that team. About 6 months, within 3 months, I'm sorry, I doubled their revenue in Airbnb. And then I went off full time. Within 6 months, I started full time Airbnb management.
Wow. That's amazing. So you currently do that? Do you do it by yourself, or how do you
Yeah, yeah, it's a big
pull
part
it off?
of my business right now is Airbnb management. So at the moment, yes, I am single employee of the organization, but always looking to expand. I just read this book. It's called Zero to 500, and in the book, he goes through details of how to build your team. How to build your team, what type of characteristics, what type of profiles, what type of culture do you want in your team. He said like if you can build your team, like your employees will pay for themselves if they're doing a good job. So like I was like, you know what, like
Mm,
I want to get to that place where I'm building teams that are doing 10 times what they're worth in a sense. But let's just say you're paying them 80K, but they're bringing one or two houses to you a month. Well, those houses, let's just say they're worth $4,000 to $5,000 a year, a gross revenue. So, and technically, they're paying for themselves. And the great thing about Airbnb management is a lot of times your clients are going to stick with you for 5 to 10 years. So, if you bring in a client to me as an employee, you're pretty much paid for yourself for the next 5 or 10.
yeah. God, that's a great. I love that perspective on employees, and it really drives proper management of your employees too. If you adapt that outlook on it, like, hey, like if I manage these, like if these, first of all, if you find the right people, the right personality traits, and then if you create the right systems and structure to allow them to flourish, it's all about just putting the right people in the right positions, and then you can flourish, right?
Yeah.
The hard part of that is just finding the people, but don't let that stop you from trying. That's for sure. That's awesome. I really like that. 0 to 500. Who do you remember the author on that book?
0 to 500 properties. His name is, it's by Vintori, CEO.
Got it.
Vintori, let me look it up.
Before we continue, I'd like to take a moment to share something I'm passionate about with you. If you're someone who is constantly striving for personal growth and loves surrounding yourself with other motivated individuals, you're going to want to hear about this. Check out growthgroupinc.com. This is an exclusive community made up of high achievers and dynamic entrepreneurs just like you. It's a space where like-minded individuals come together, collaborate, and support each other on their own journey to success. Growth Group is more than just a community, it's a collective mindset, a commitment to getting better every single day. We believe in the power of connection, collaboration, and constant growth, and we're confident that being part of this community will give you an unparalleled advantage on your path to success. So take a moment, visit growthgroupincorporated.com, and join us as we elevate our lives together. Trust me, this is one investment in your future you will not regret. Now, let's get back to our conversation. People recommend me books faster than I can read them.
Oh yeah, it's zero to 500 properties in 5 years, and the let's see if you can see it. Well, it's a
Oh
little
yeah,
hard.
perfect. Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
Brooke, and his last name is Pfautz. So it's all about building your inventory. But what I really like about that book is a lot of principles are for business owners in general. Like he talks about goal setting. He talks about how to build your team. So I'm like, well, this is just a lot of principles for building a successful business.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Very applicable. Um, awesome. Well, let's see. So for anybody that is in the Houston area, they can reach Jesse. Well, very soon. Have you bought the domain yet?
Yeah, it's called texasrent2own.net, and then my other business that I've been doing Airbnb on is called renewedresidences.com. So RENEWED residences with an S.com, and so we've been doing that for again over 2 years. And
In local to Houston, then I imagine.
yeah, so we're doing Houston, and we're gonna start a branch in San Antonio soon, God willing.
Awesome.
Everything will work
Yeah,
out. Yeah.
man. You know, one of the more business owners I've talked to, and myself included, made this mistake. But there's so many people that wait too long to hire their first employee, or their first person. I don't know enough about you, Jesse, to know if that's something you're struggling with. But uh, if I could start over my first business, I would hire earlier, um, just because it's like the whole burning the boat philosophy. Have you heard of that? It's like you
Yeah.
imagine
Yeah.
like a pirate ship going to take over an island. It's like when they get there, they burn their boat because they're either going to die or they're going to take over the island, and they'll have their the boats of the people they're taking over. It's just that mentality of like, all right, I'm at the point where I'm busy. I can't do this all myself, or I need more business, so I need making more cold calls, and then you just make the move and hire somebody. And what I always urge people to consider is people get into the habit of thinking, what if? Like, okay, what if I do hire that person and then I don't have enough work for them? Or what if I hire somebody and they just aren't what I need? Or like, what if they steal from me? Or what if they mess up and don't take care of a client like I would? Well, the thing that I challenge people to do is to think all the way through the what if. Like, okay, so yeah, what if they don't turn out to be a great employee? Well, more than likely, when you hired your first employee, you had to figure out a lot just to feel comfortable bringing them on. So you had to figure out maybe a uniform. You had to figure out how they were going to speak with with your customers. You had to figure out how to teach them about how to take care of Airbnbs. All that stuff you created. Once you create it, it's not like you have to recreate. I mean, you can change it a little bit, but the next time, so you go find somebody new now, and you already have all that created, so it's easier the second time, right? Or like, let's say they do steal from you. Well, figure it out. Figure out how not to get stolen from next time. Or there's so many. It's easy to fear change, or um, things that are going to increase financial burden. But like you just talked about earlier, employees will pay for themselves if they are doing a good job. Like that right there is gold, and it's so true because if you find the right people and if you provide the right structure, like I said earlier, to allow them to flourish, it's only going to increase your own trajectory and the business trajectory. And so it's one of the things where it's like, it's just worth sitting down and like talking to yourself and being like, when do I need somebody? When am I going to do this? Because it's super powerful, I think, when you get to that point of hiring somebody. So the sooner a person in business can get to that, the better, right? Because we're stronger when we have more minds.
Yeah, it's true. And so one of the things it mentioned is hire somebody where you're weak at. So if you know you're
Yeah.
not really strong in sales, hire somebody that's really good in sales. Or if you're not really detail oriented or you don't like the paperwork, like hire somebody that's good with that, because then you can focus on what you're good at, and then they can bring
You
in,
know,
complement each other.
hell yeah, man. Because yeah, you don't want the same person, right? Do you know Steve Soprani?
I'm not familiar with him.
Okay, so Steve Soprani, he owns Soprani Consulting. I first met him through M1. Now he's in M10, but he helped me find my first operations manager. And one of the exercises he had me do as we were figuring out the job description and like the job ad and all that is he said, sit down and write down everything you don't like doing, you know? And it's not, and it's maybe not that you don't like doing it. It's just that you don't have the time to do, or that something that you need to delegate in order to elevate, as corny as that sounds. There's something to be said there. Right. And so I wrote down like replying to emails, talking with customers all the time, sales, hiring and firing, um, yeah, creating job ads, making sure the guys are keeping the vehicles clean, organizing the shop, blah 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 blah. And then when we were looking for that candidate, we were able to identify like those are the things that we're looking for, and it's worked out fantastic. Trevor and I are not the same person. I'm that person that's just like freaking like a ping ball jumping off the walls all the time. He's a lot more like calm and collective and well thought out, and we complement each other very well. And it's important to identify that in your organization, what you need, where you're at, where you're going, what you're missing, what all that good stuff, and that really helps narrow down the scope of what you're looking for. Which times of the essence. So you don't want to waste time with the wrong person, but at the same time, you can't let that scare you from taking that next move and hiring somebody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so there's some cultural index. I think it's culturalindex.com that they recommended to just kind of see what personalities you're coming in and then find the right person for the right fit. And so I think that those type of keys, those type of tools are very useful for bringing in people to know that they're going to fit with your organization.
Yeah. Culturalindex.com. Cultureindex.com. Yeah, nice. Free diagnostic. I'll have to check this out. Yeah, personality tests. They're pretty interesting. It's amazing what you can get like from the disc assessment and stuff like that. You can really learn a lot about the way people think, and God, that's so fascinating. A lot of I feel like this conversation has been about whatever we're all putting our focus on. We need to be able to communicate well and get along well, and that requires complex teams of different personalities and different abilities and strengths and weaknesses, and it's so I don't know, it's just beautiful. Like when I think of like what life is, it's really, to me, it's like sharing energy and sharing love between people and objects and everything. And it's really cool to think about like how a business in its way is like just this big ball of energy, and like any organization is all these energies working together. And like if you have all in sync and everybody's working together, that energy just keeps growing. Whereas if you have just a couple like toxic personalities, it can just take the whole ball down. It's really interesting, and I think it's just important to reiterate to ourselves the importance of building strong teams of dimensional people of all different spectrums, and there's just so much power in that. And that's, I think, what I personally like probably the most about life and business and just everything is just the whole idea of relationships and getting to meet people and working together. And like I said earlier, sharing love, sharing energy. I don't think you have to talk to somebody to share energy, so and that's like, I can't remember if it was you or somebody else today that said, it's about who you surround yourself with, and that energy. And there's so much truth to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one other thing, share is, he mentioned something about like he spends like 30% of his function in his business is just finding the right people to hire. And I was like, wow, and then the second part is building company culture. And so like two of his big tasks are not even in the weeds. It's just building culture and finding the right people. And so once you get, and that was a really big mind opener for me, because because I was always assuming like, oh, I have to be the one doing the work, right? Like I have to be the one getting into the weeds and doing it. But I think when you start to think like an entrepreneur that's high scale, you start thinking about, no, my main goal is finding the right people to hire and bringing them in.
That's gold, man. I think most of us start a business because we're opportunistic and we see that opportunity to make money, and then once you start to find the money, once you start to create an income, when your business starts to put out value and you start to get rewarded for it, after a while, it's easy. You can just keep growing your business and working on it and being in it and running it. But then you get to this point where you can't do any more unless you hire other people. And there's so many people that, and I know people even in my family who started a business and just got to that point where they're maxed out, where everything that goes on in the business has a little bit of their supervision to some extent. And so, and they're limited, obviously. We all are in what we can do in a day. We are. It's true. And so the business kind of stayed at a certain point and just it's kept this. It's needed the same kind of focus. It's needed the same kind of attention from the business owner the whole 30, 40, 50 years that it's been around. Whereas you see those businesses that start, they make the money and they figure it out and they're like, okay, now I start to see we're booked out 2 to 3 weeks, or my to-do list is getting so long that I'm not really enjoying this. Like I'm a little overwhelmed. I'm making good money, but if I want to have like an actual true business, I need to start to scale. And then that's when you start, and that's probably honestly where you might be at, where it's like, okay, great, we're at this point where we have all this stuff going on. Now it's time to start to hire more so that we can delegate to elevate, right? And it's because it's weird because when we start the business, it's like a lot of times it's a love for what we do. Like for me, it was a lawn care company. I enjoyed the satisfaction of going out and mowing a lawn and leaving it and it looking good and all this stuff. But after a while, like I can only mow so many yards, right? So it's like okay, so what's my true goal here? Is it to mow grass and get enjoyment out of that, or is it to grow a business and have something that enables me to have time freedom so that I can go and experience more life, can impact more people, and can see the world for what it really is. Like that's, and once you get to that point where it's like, okay, sweet, this is really cool. I got this ball of fire going here. It's this business. Yes, it takes my oversight, but now I have this new epiphany that, hey, I have this business. Now I need to work to scale it. And then you start to work to scale it, and then all of a sudden you start to build traction there. And that's kind of where I'm at, where, I hired my operations manager, I got my bookkeeper. Now we're currently hiring a salesperson. We're just at that point where we're scaling now, and it's done tenfold for me. If you would have asked me when I started my business what my business would look like someday, I couldn't have conceptualized me being in an office all day, sending emails, talking about hiring and being a visionary, right? It's something you kind of have to learn through starting a business, right? And I think that the earlier somebody in business can figure out that, hey, really, it's all about figuring out how to provide a service, everything around that service, and it's got to be a sought after service. Once you get that created, once you get all the guidelines for how to provide that service, then you can start to train other people to do it and start to push that knowledge out of your mind. I think that the biggest issue is with entrepreneurs and most people that in this position are people like to have too much of a control over quality, and that prevents people from feeling comfortable hiring other people. But the thing about it is, people screw up all the time, and you got to realize, people need to realize that your customers understand that. Yeah, you might lose some customers because one of your new hires screws up, but you're going to be way farther ahead losing a couple customers, but also gaining a bunch of customers from somebody else putting in the work rather than yourself, and then it's just that mindset of like, okay, we're going to like fail forward. Like, yeah, we're going to open ourselves up into more liability because we're bringing more people in. But when something happens, we're going to take ownership for it. We're going to figure out how to adjust and go back at it at a better speed, or at a new trajectory, or new tactic, new way, and then just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
It's just that mindset.
And
I think it just takes some time for somebody to create that mindset.
I like Mike Scoldner said this. He says you start off with knowing what you want, all right? So some people are okay with 10 properties. Some people, and so he started off with like a goal of like, I think it was like 5 or 10,000 a month, just like from the management company. And I mean, now he's exploded, past that. But it's like he knew ultimately what he wanted was freedom of time. He had that why to, hey, I want to spend time with my kids. I want to spend time with my wife. And I don't want to work a ton. So I think he said he works on the business like 2 or 3 hours a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
and that, that's the goal. I mean, So I guess, and kind of my point in short is, so many people get into business for time freedom. They want to make money. They want to be able to do what they want with their time. And then it explodes and they get overwhelmed, and then they never figure out how to get out from underneath the load. And people just need to learn earlier that in order to get from underneath the load, you have to delegate and hire. And then, because we're not in business to tie ourselves down and make our lives miserable and busy. God, I hate that word busy. I catch myself saying it sometimes, but there's no point in being busy all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're busy all the time, that doesn't leave any time for experiences and time with your family and travel and, growth and self-reflection and self-improvement. I mean, right? So it's like, it's sad. And that's a lot of what motivates me to do this podcast and start a few different things, because I want to help people in those positions of success, as far as society sees it. But when it comes down to it, they're not all that successful because they're just buried in their business and they don't know how to get out of it. And they don't have that time freedom, and they're working on the weekends and working at night when their kids are at their t-ball games and all that good stuff. Right.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there that are in that position that are just unhappy because they don't know how to navigate this crazy ball of fire that they have.
Yep. I agree with that.
For sure, man. Well, no, God, Jesse, it's been awesome to me. I think we see eye to eye a lot on this, and it's really cool what you're doing. It was neat to learn about wholesaling and the rent to buy. Anybody watching this, if you're down in the Houston area, Jesse, I mean, dude, you're a cool guy. I mean, hit up Jesse, ask him to go to lunch, get coffee, whatever. Maybe you might have Airbnbs that you're interested in having him try out managing for you. I mean, he's obviously got an amazing track record there. So that's really cool. Jesse, at the end of my podcast, I always like to just kind of leave like an open mic. Just, do you have anything that you live by, or that you, just anything you would leave the audience with, like anything they can think about, or just anything at all? And then also, please let them know how they can reach you. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of anything more important than faith. The Lord has been so good to me, and I think as I grow in my faith with Him and understanding that, all good things come from Him, and as long as He's priority number one in my life, everything will work out. So that's the number one.
Amen.
Best way to reach me, I would say, is cell phone 832-299-5688. My email is jesse@renewedresidences.com. So feel free to reach out to me anytime via text or email. Our website again is renewedresidences.com, and that's with ES at the end of residences. So it's
awesome.
been a pleasure, Michael. Thank you, and we'll stay in touch and everything.
Yeah, no, sounds great, man. And like I said, thanks for teaching us about the rent to buy. The whole wholesaling. And, one of the things that I really took from today was how, as a leader in a company or a hiring manager, if you hire the right employees will pay for themselves if they're doing a good job. That's so true. I mean, it's so freaking true. And it just fortifies the idea that we have to make sure that we have the right KPIs, key performance indicators, and stuff like that to be able to make sure that our employees, our team members, are truly providing the output that they're capable of. That they said they would when you interviewed them at the initial job interview. So that's really powerful stuff, man. Thanks so much. It's funny how this podcast came about today. Like I explained at the beginning of the episode, it was supposed to be just like a 15-20 minute virtual coffee. Jesse and I were supposed to meet each other, and I was like, hey, Jesse, why don't you hop on the podcast? We'll just make a recording quick. You seem like a cool guy. And I'm glad we did, because this turned out to be an awesome episode. So thanks again, Jesse, for coming on, and definitely keep in touch. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Thank you. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
That was another episode of The Michael Maloney Show. Thanks for listening. Have a great day.